Hey there, my name's Joe Keyport, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For this week's episode, I talked to Julia Eubanks, singer, guitarist, and songwriter for the indie rock band Creeping Charlie. The band recently put out their debut record, How to Kill Creeping Charlie, at the end of last year. During the interview, we talked about the band's formation, the progression between their EP and their debut full-length, and Julia's love for the EBow. And that's all right here on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Hey, how's it going, Julia?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, especially for a Tuesday night. The week hasn't, fully kicked in yet, so.
Right. Not digressed yet.
Not totally. So I always start out interviews the same way, which is I ask bands, artists, songwriters how they describe their music to other people. Anytime someone's like, "Oh, you make music, you're in a band," like, what is it? Like, what is Creeping Charlie? So like, and a lot of times people have that like the one-liner or that kind of that one phrase they use to describe it to either make the conversation go away so they can move on with their day, or they kind of keep it in layman's terms for the everyday person. So what's that for you when people go, "Oh, you're in a band? What is Creeping Charlie?"
It kind of depends on who's asking me, but oftentimes I'll hit them with a cop out indie rock because everything is pretty much indie rock. But I think our little tagline, we make music for cool older sisters. I say, like, I feel like our music, or I aim for music that a cool older sibling would be listening to in like a 90s movie. So
you're on that mixtape that gets handed off at the beginning that pops up later in the story.
That would be the dream. That's absolutely the dream. But I guess, indie rock, I think we kind of, the songs I write kind of vary from, like, I have some really intense ballads on there, but I've also got some like kind of indie punk type songs. So there's kind of a range, but still exploring that for sure. Indie rock, I suppose, is a good overarching term.
Absolutely. So then how did you get into music? Is Creeping Charlie your project? Are you like the primary songwriter, or is it, because there's a full band?
Yeah, so it's kind of both. So everything that's released now is written entirely by me. And the recordings are right now, everything that's released right now is me on guitar, vocals, and my sister on bass, and Jack Malone on drums. The stuff that we're working on now, actually, primarily written by me, and Harry is also doing some guitar parts, and he's in the recordings this time, so that's exciting. Because it really fell together as a live band. Okay. I didn't really think any of it would take off. Like, I wrote some music and recorded it, and then I was like, okay, screw it, let's do some shows. And then we just started doing a lot of shows, and then that band became really solid, and I love like everyone in Creeping Charlie. I just love so much. Obviously, Esme is my sister, so I have to.
Yeah.
But, even if I didn't have to, she's amazing. And Jack and Harry are great people too. So that's been really nice. It's kind of shifting with, I don't really know. I guess it's almost like previously it's kind of been more of a solo project, but I think it's going to move into being more collaborative. But yeah, that's kind of the layout of the band. And I don't think we really started, even though I had released Asymmetrical May of 2020. I consider Creeping Charlie starting this summer because that was our first real show. So we're pretty recent. I would say Creeping Charlie, my music total, I guess, has been around for about a year and a half, but Creeping Charlie, I would say, is like really only 6 months old.
Yeah. I only became aware of you within the last year. Is kind of when, unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch you perform live yet. Excuse me. But I definitely started seeing you on show posters and footage, getting jealous of like, man, I wish I was at that show. Like within the last, early 2021, kind of into that last year.
Yeah.
So before we get too far ahead, when did you start? Have you always been a musical person, a songwriter, or was it because Asymmetrical was kind of your musical debut on top of like the band forming? So
Yeah. I guess when I was really little, I played a little bit of music. My dad is a
Mhm.
musician, or he's a neuroscientist, but he plays in bands. So I've kind of been around music for a while. When I was really little, I wrote a banger of a song called Party with My Friends. Which, may have to be recorded and released later on. And then in middle school, I had a little middle school band. We were called the
Mm.
Blue Swamp Donkeys, which is the most foul band name ever, but it's pretty funny. And then in high school, I didn't write. I just completely lost touch with music. And I took a few lessons here and there. I worked with Mike Michaels and the Orange Goodness. He's amazing.
Okay.
But I never really had a consistent, even the band in middle school was pretty inconsistent. And then in high school, I completely stopped doing music for one reason or another, not totally sure why. And then freshman year of college, something just kind of, I don't know, switched and I
Yeah.
started writing music.
Was it all primarily guitar-based music, or?
Yeah, I do everything. Guitar is kind of I feel like when people describe themselves in their kind of musicianship, it's like you're a musician or a songwriter or a singer,
Mhm.
I guess. And I think I definitely am first a songwriter,
Mhm.
then a guitar player, and then a singer.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm trying to branch out of that a bit. The more music I'm making, I'm
Mhm.
able to kind of push those boundaries a bit. But yeah, I guess I've always been a little bit interested, but really only started doing music seriously like 2 years ago
Okay. And so then
or
what?
three.
Okay. With what's on then Asymmetrical, your debut EP, that was all
Yeah.
written relatively quickly to releasing that then in 2020, or?
Yeah. So a lot of that I wrote, gosh, my timelines get so messed up because I released it 2020 and I recorded it, I think it would have been my winter break of sophomore year or freshman year. Oh my gosh, I don't even
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'm like
It all
it's
blurs
so
together.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty quick. It was a very different writing process than the album How to Kill Creeping Charlie, because with Asymmetrical, I had pretty much written the songs. A few of them I had like bits and pieces of for a little bit, but I wrote them all and then I went in a week and just like went through and recorded everything. And then there was the back and forth with the mixing and editing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty short window relative to How to Kill Creeping Charlie. That took, oh my gosh, like a year, I think. Really, it took so long. I basically rewrote the album like twice because I had cycled through songs. I would put something on there and then just come up with something I liked better and then boot another song up. And Jack Malone, who's on the drums, was just like, Julia, you just gotta like put it out there because you're always gonna doubt it,
Mm-hmm. Is that the EP or is that the full length?
This is the full length How to Kill
Okay.
Creeping Charlie. This one came out December 10th, so it's super recent. Kind of crazy that that's out there, honestly. I forget about that. So like you can be working on something so long and then one day it's just whoop, out of your
Yeah.
control.
Well, was it what's it been like then? Because it's rare. It's not always often we talk to someone who's released music like a month prior, has been able to like see what the album is like out. So how does it feel to have the debut record out? Given that it sounds like you're constantly reworking on it and rewriting it and working
Yeah.
on stuff. Like, how did it feel to have it out? And what's the response been?
The response has been great. I think it's a little bit sad because we had to cancel a tour.
Yeah.
So I had like 7 tour dates, 6, 7 planned, so that I was really counting on that to be kind of our, kind of share the album and everything. And luckily we were able to do our album release show December 22nd at the Cedar Cultural Center with some awesome bands. So that was really nice. But then it just became too much with COVID and we didn't want to, put anyone at risk or cause any issues. And so we called those off. So it's been a little bit weird navigating that because that was my primary way of kind of getting it out there and marketing. And my philosophy kind of as a band, or our philosophy as a band, just kind of every show you can, just do it. I think especially when you're starting out, it's just been like more and more and more and more shows. I think this summer we did just a ridiculous amount of shows. We actually did 2 shows in one night, which was, drew the line there. That one. But yeah, that's been kind of just how we've spread our music. So that was really sad that we couldn't do that. And I think, now I've been doing some social media stuff to promote it, but it's gotten a lot of love. And I think I'm actually thinking about right now today, I was thinking about this, doing something where I go through and do like a lyric breakdown, because this one was very kind of focused on just identity issues and like how like growing pains. And I think there's a lot to be analyzed in the lyrics. And I think that'd be a cool way to give people a way to interact with the music that's not a show necessarily.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of thinking about things like that. So it's definitely been weird, but I'm so happy to have it out there. I feel very proud of it ultimately, even after all the do I like it, the cycle of the I am like the greatest musician to exist and this is terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've kind of made a little bit of peace with it. I'm really happy it's out.
Well, absolutely. It's a fantastic record. I've been listening to it all day today, and it's one of those that I was bummed that I didn't spend as much time with it when it came out end of December as I did, earlier this month and, leading up to the record. You kind of touched on this when we were talking about kind of your getting back into writing music, which was you moving into the full length, you were doing things a little differently, and just like how you wrote and stuff like that. So talk to me about going into what was different for you moving into the full length compared to the EP, because a full length record is a big statement for an artist, a band. Yeah. It's your first. It's so talk to me about that. What was going on for you and the band with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was very much, my writing process is super chaotic, and I knew that I wanted to, if I was going to do an album, I wanted to have something a little bit thematic, or at least have an opening and closing track and have songs that reference each other a bit, or kind of like reappearing like tropes. So I think going into that, I had those in mind a bit, but each song was written so differently, and then it kind of, I think I tried to stay a little bit on theme, but also I think when you're in such a specific spot in your life and you're really honest about how everything is going, then naturally those themes appear.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to stay with theme. And I think that happened with the record for sure. And this is something I realized recently about my writing process, which I think is kind of interesting, is that I don't keep track of anything very well.
Okay.
I'm very obsessive, but not organized. And a lot of the time will come up with a melody first. It's just kind of how, I don't know. It changes every song. Sometimes I'll have words, sometimes I'll have a riff, but a lot of the time I'll just have like a vocal melody and then build out from there. And because I don't keep track of it, I'll just kind of have it like running through my head. And then there are so many of them running through my head that the ones that aren't catchy enough get pushed out. And then I think it's kind of self-selecting what like sticks out to me, which is like what's going to be a good song or what's going to stick with people. And I think I realized that about myself a lot more with this record. And it's just a lot more songs also.
Yeah.
It's double the length. And yeah, I don't know. It was tough. There are some songs that took me, GTFO, kind of that angry one. I sat down in about 10 minutes. It was like, done. I'm happy with it. That rocks. And it captures what I need it to capture.
Yeah.
And then the last song on the record, The Year I Lost Myself and Found the Ebo, that one I had written and then I hated the chorus and I rewrote the chorus and then I went back and rewrote the verses, and I just drank like a ton of coffee and sat down. I was just kind of wired, and I just went through. I'm like on Pro Tools, pinching things together.
Yeah.
Doing some editing, and I think a theme kind of emerged with that, and it was much more immersive. I kind of dedicated more time to it, just within my life. Like with Asymmetrical, I just kind of worked around things, and I honestly don't remember writing a lot of Asymmetrical. It feels like it just kind of happened, but with How to Kill Creeping Charlie, I took a semester off and only took 2 classes at the U of M because I went into the semester knowing like I'm making this a priority. So that was definitely different to view music as my first rather than like as a side thing. Now I feel like it's almost more like school is a side thing and music is my main thing now. But yeah, a lot of differences, I think. I don't know if I covered all of them, but yeah, I am really happy it's out, and it's very weird that it's out.
Well, absolutely. So then talk to me a little bit about kind of the themes and stuff you were exploring in the record, because listening through it, it's very stream of consciousness. It feels almost like I'm reading a diary entry with how it flows. Like, I mean, you talked about how things are kind of paired together a little bit. But like, like the first two songs are paired, and there's some other stuff that I was going to ask about later with like how the A side relates to the B side almost. So you don't have to do a track by track breakdown, but take me through the record and what you were exploring and putting into those songs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny that you say A side, B side, because that is exactly how I structured that record.
Oh,
Like
nice.
I put all kind of the rock songs, and then there's like a stark change. I think it's GTFO, and then When It Rains in LA.
Yep,
in there.
that's what I've written down, because sometimes I ask that question of a band, they're like, that's just how it landed, dude, and I'm like,
no, there's a very like there's a cut off in this one, and I think. Yeah, I don't know really why. I just liked that I just really like the idea of a record in like an old fashioned way. And I think I get really sad about streaming. And I've kind of seen this with the record versus the EP. Like when you do more releases with fewer tracks, that's better for your numbers. And that's so sad to me because I love the like concept album, So I knew that I wanted to do something like that. And then it kind of worked out in that way. I'm trying to think of a track breakdown a bit. Obviously the intro, I Don't Ball Part 1. That was, I honestly don't even remember how I wrote that. But I actually even referenced some old songs that are not on the album. So I referenced some songs on the EP.
Okay.
As well as this one song that I wrote a very long time ago. There's a lyric in I Don't Ball Part 1 that's lean in, it can be so much, be quiet, don't cut your bangs. Quiet is on How to Kill Creeping Charlie, Lean Into It is on Asymmetrical, and So Much was the song that I recorded and only released on SoundCloud. And then Cut Your Bangs is a reference to a song that I probably will never release. So I kind of wanted to show like little things where like if you really listen, you can catch it, but it's going to still stay with this theme of like trying to hold it together, trying to kind of cope with the madness of life. And then I Don't Ball Part 2 was just kind of an offshoot of that, and like more specifically diving into the idea of just not feeling very confident and kind of struggling with everything. There's like all sorts of struggles in that song. But I like bring up religion a few times. Like I went to like Catholic kindergarten through 12th grade.
Oof.
Yeah, that'll do it, right? And I talk about a little like just how like nothing really does it for me. Like I'll see, religion or crystals or astrology. I reference that. So I kind of talk about that and like just kind of embracing this awkwardness and tension. And there's kind of beauty in that, I think was the general message behind I Don't Ball Part 2. And then Quiet, I think is the third track. I'm blanking now, but that one is so funny to me, like just lyrics wise, because it's such a deeply, deeply sad song about just kind of dissociating, but it's also the most upbeat song on the record, I think.
Yeah, it feels the most like 90s grunge almost.
Yeah, definitely I could see that. And that's kind of where I get a lot of my influences from. Built to Spill is like my favorite band ever. Nirvana, I'm kind of a Nirvana super fan. I always, whenever I'm thinking of influences of bands, it's just my mind goes blank, but I always Built to Spill, Nirvana, Mazzy Star, a lot of those like 90s. I'm kind of going through a Stereolab phase right now as well.
Nice.
I think all the tracks, and then like on the sadder side, the last track was really stream of consciousness. Even every time I rewrote it, just kind of this sadness, but it's okay. Like things are moving on. And then I wanted to call it The Year I lost myself and found the EBow, because on most of the songs I use an EBow, which I discovered and just started using on this record. And I really associate that with this section of my life. And it's just such a specific sound and one object that I feel,
yeah, I was like, I was going to be like, what about the EBow drew you to it, or it to you? Because like, for those who aren't tech savvy, the EBow kind of does a lot of like long sustaining notes that you can use, whether you're trying to emulate a violin or some slidey like guitar stuff. So I was like, I don't think I've ever run into a person in real life that has been like, I like the EBow. It's always like I see someone on YouTube like demoing it. So.
Yeah, I love it. I think like the first time I like heard it in a song and knew that was Heroes by David Bowie. And I was like, this rips. This is awesome. I want to do something like that. And I also love just the kind of swell. I think a lot of the times when I'm kind of composing something, there's something missing in energy. And like, I feel like this is such a musician thing to say, and I'm sure you've like done the same thing. It's like, oh, it just doesn't quite sound full. Like it sounds a little empty or a little spare. And this bad boy, the EBow, that's like such a good remedy for that. So that's on like a lot of the songs. Except for the last one. Well, not all the songs, but most of the songs, not the last one. And then of course I put EBow in the song that it's not on, but yeah. So that's kind of like a breakdown of the tracks. I guess like there are some. Kill the Gatekeeper. I want to specifically touch on this one because somehow we were in a Radio K interview, and the drummer was like, oh, like a lot of these are about like relationships, and they're not. GTFO is very obviously about, this is about a failed relationship. But Kill the Gatekeeper, I think I'm realizing that I think people think it might be about someone, but it's actually supposed to be, and I think it's super valid to have any interpretation of it. That's kind of the whole beauty of it. But what I went into it writing about was when I was really little, I was very fixated with death and kind of how it was the secret, and the only people who knew the secret couldn't communicate it. Okay. And I visualized like this little person, like he was keeping all the secrets, so he was the gatekeeper. And I think in the song I talked about like anesthesia, lack of paranoia, like what is death like? Like I'm just curious in the most pure sense of just, it's so unknown and so haunting, and I want to make sure that one is like known to not be about like a dude. It's not, because that one was very near and dear. That one's a very vulnerable one, but yeah,
absolutely.
It's got the EBow on it as well, of course.
You gotta have the EBow on most things. So you kind of touched on it when talking about the last track, which was you spent a lot of time kind of composing it in Pro Tools. Did you do a lot of like the arranging for the songs, or is that something the full band at least has a part in?
Yeah, so I do like hardly any mixing, really. Okay. So for the record, for How to Kill Creeping Charlie, and for the previous two projects, we worked with Winterland Studios. Yeah. And Josh Levy has mixed the songs. And usually what happens is like, I'm kind of the liaison with that. And then I'll talk to whoever's on it. And they're like, hey, I want this part to sound a little different. But I'm definitely the most nitpicky about it. And there's a few songs I would do some, like, I don't do really any mixing. I'm very bad with that. But in terms of like editing or choosing which tracks or like comping tracks that I want to have, I'll do a little bit of that. Cause I did some of the recording where I am right now in this garage. Yeah. As well as at Winterland. So I don't do a ton of it, but the band definitely has a say in that. And also in the new stuff, we're actually working on, I don't know what the project is going to be, but we were just at Pachyderm Studios.
Oh, nice.
Which is like one of my favorite life experiences so far. That was incredible. We recorded 3 songs, just one 12-hour day. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to space those out, or if we can do a single or 3 singles, an EP. But that one, I think the mixing process is going to look a little different because I haven't worked with other engineers. So I think this will be very interesting to see kind of how this plays out in a different setting. And yeah, I have I have like all the audio files here, and I'm probably gonna go through and
Yeah.
pick out some good vocal tracks, because we did most of it. We just recorded live, like we would just do 3 takes. The guy who runs the studio, Nick,
Mm-hmm.
he has such a similar philosophy to just music and recording than that I do, and like the way that he approached everything was very much, we want to just get really good takes from you, and we don't want to wear you out. We're just gonna get everything. And that worked really, really well. It's super exciting to try working with different producers, so I'm excited about that. And he actually produced the last Beach House record.
Oh, nice.
So I'm like, I trust you.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
Show me your ways. Yeah, whatever your process is, I'm so down to learn, because I definitely am more focused on the songwriting. But more and more so, I think learning about it gives you more creative control, obviously, with mixing and mastering. And I don't think I'll ever learn mastering.
No, I don't.
At this point,
I feel like there's only like 4 people who really know what's going on when it comes to mastering anything, and we'll just kind of let them have that monopoly. And mixing is such a like art in itself outside of songwriting. Like
it is. It's such an art. I mean, it can make or break, especially now that you can just do so much with it. Like it's an art in a totally different language. And that's, I would love to learn more about it. Pro Tools, we use Pro Tools. And I just think I've been when I talk to my friends about it who do more mixing, they say to do something like Ableton or Logic first, because it's a bit easier, I guess. But I also have never done that, so I have no idea. But I just know that Pro Tools is so not user friendly.
Not in the slightest, no.
No. It's really, really tough. So I don't do a lot of that, but the band definitely has a lot of say in how the mixes sound, and on this one too. I'm really excited for this one. I think they're my favorite songs I've written. So
that's dope. Moving back to the record a little bit, I wanted to ask about the last song some more, because that one is like, when I think of like final songs on records, like that's one of the ones that kind of pops to my mind now, because of like the extra orchestration and stuff you have in it. And you have trumpets done by played by Patrick McCarthy. So was that when you were working on The Year I Lost Myself, picked up the Ebo? It's a long title. It is. Were you wanting the trumpets and kind of the orchestration that really made it that final sound, or was that something you built that got built in the studio as you were working on it?
That one, the timeline of that song is so bizarre.
Okay.
But basically, the drums and guitar got recorded because I had this pretty loose idea, and we had gotten through all of our things that we needed to get through in the studio that day. And if you have extra studio time, it's like you're gonna do something.
Use it, yeah. You paid for it, you gotta use it, yeah.
Yeah. So I just it was just the drummer and me, and then we just laid that out, just the guitar and drums, and then I saved some of those lyrics that I originally had, but later I went back and rewrote those about 3 different times. And at the end, I knew that I wanted to. I had it was the melody thing where I had this melody stuck in my head, and I was like playing it on piano as kind of a filler. So I was thinking it'd be really cool to have violins or trumpets. Like I didn't really know yet. And then I just decided it'd be cool to do trumpets, and I had Patrick come in, and I was like, hey, I just played him a little part on piano, and he's great, and he's just, figures it out and does it. That one was so interesting to write. And I was actually inspired by the kind of trumpet sound on Kyoto by Phoebe Bridgers. Because I thought it was cool to kind of have trumpets in a song that doesn't really sound like it would have trumpets. So that kind of came together. Just I knew that I was going to have that melody in there, and you can hear it it's after a verse or a chorus when I do the kind of ahs in that melody. So I had those with my voice, and I had tracked 5 of these ahs, and then I did a few an octave up. And then I thought it would be cool to blend something in there. So those are kind of melded with the trumpet, which I really like, and I think it gives it kind of the swelling. I had originally put a guitar solo at the end of the song, and it just did not feel right at all. To just have like, it's a very heartfelt song, and there's just like this ripping guitar solo.
Yeah,
sometimes works, you know, but
it's the 80s ballad thing. You just got to put on top of a piano some just searing guitar leads.
Yeah, exactly. It just did. Yeah, it gave it this like direction that I was like, I don't know that I want it to be this. And then I realized it just needed like a melody that was repeated, and it kind of builds, like there's kind of that like note at the end, like that payoff note that's really nice. Yeah, and that was really, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, to do like a orchestra version of that song.
Yeah,
to just kind of like get a violin, get a cello, get more trumpets, get a section of, you know, horns or something, because I think there's a lot of potential for it to be really big.
Oh, absolutely. Should reach out to Sam Tudor, who plays violin in National Park Service. He's got the hookups.
Okay, I totally will. Yeah, National Park Service playing Midwest Music Fest.
Yeah,
that was so fun today to see everyone posting like all the. It's going to be a phenomenal.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. Yeah.
Very excited.
What night are you playing?
The second.
Okay, because I play trombone in NPS.
Oh, nice.
Okay, and so we're playing, I think, the first night. I don't remember.
There's so many stages. I wish there was like maybe this is on the website, because I haven't looked at the website.
Yeah.
But I wish I could see like who's playing where and at what stage, and like how close that is. Because there's also there's so many different variables. It's hard to know who's where.
This will be my first time involved with that or being there in the slightest. So I'm just excited. I'm just happy to be there. This is kind of a loaded question with COVID. You mentioned that you had to cancel some tour days and stuff, but is there anything coming up for the band that people should be aware of?
Ooh, that's what I'm planning for right now. I'm like really trying to reschedule these and get as many as I can outdoors, just so it's a little more cool. But I don't know when they're announcing this, but we are going to be doing a show at 7th Street with Products and Bugsy, and I think one other band.
Nice.
March 11th. So that'll be nice. And then obviously Midwest Music Fest. And I'm hoping to plan some summer shows and maybe do a tour. There's so much up in the air, but I guess I would tell people to be on the lookout for our next little project, because I think that'll be sooner than later.
Well,
with the rate that it's going at. Yeah.
Well, so then where can people connect with you online to make sure they know everything that's going on with Creeping Charlie?
I think the best place, if you want to get all the Creeping Charlie intel, is our Instagram. That's where I'm always posting everything. I'm real bad with Facebook, but I should step that up. But yeah, Instagram is kind of like the spot to know where all the shows, any releases, kind of keep track of what shenanigans we're up to, you know.
And you got merch and stuff on Bandcamp. Did you have merch with this release?
So we did merch. It was kind of an interesting merch layout. This summer, I made t-shirts that I took fabric and made cyanotypes of Creeping Charlie.
Okay.
And then I sewed them on and then also screen printed Creeping Charlie. And they were just the most labor intensive. The shirts are super cool, but they were super labor intensive. And so I think those might be phased out. And then I did a poll on Insta, or not a poll, I don't know what they're called on Instagram, where you can do ask me questions about the band. And someone was saying that there needs to be Halloween themed Creeping Charlie merch. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So I reached out to Sarah Hutchinson, and she designed like the skeleton with Creeping Charlie around it, which is nice because it's not so like overtly Halloween, you know.
Yeah.
I wear, whatever. So that's kind of been we had like in between. So there isn't like How to Kill Creeping Charlie merch, but I think there might be some stuff in the works with that. We'll have to see.
How to Kill Creeping Charlie is out now. Make sure to go check it out after you listen to this podcast if you haven't yet, because it's a very good record. It's so good. It's over on most streaming services from what I understand.
Yeah.
Well, Julia, I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me.
Yeah, so nice to meet you and talk to you. I hope to meet you in person one day.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @EarCoffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.